Somebody cool off that AC, because Angel Caruso's here.
Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to rank all of the James Bond villains, the main villain of each of the 25 Eon produced movies. I'm not doing the other 2 or 3 or 4 radio serials, I'm not doing that. I'm doing just the movies that count and matter. So, these are in no particular order at all, but I'm going to rate each of them and give a brief description of what they're about, their effectiveness against Bond. So, starting with Elliot Carver. Elliot Carver was a British media baron who attempted to provoke a war between the United Kingdom and China in order to destroy the Chinese government and use the new government to obtain exclusive broadcasting rights in China. The character was the main antagonist in the 1997 James Bond film Tomorrow Never Dies, and was played by Jonathan Pryce. Elliot Carver was born in Hong Kong, officially an orphan. He is the illegitimate son of a German woman who died in childbirth, and Lord Roverman, a press tycoon. A Chinese family took the boy for a one-time fee of £50. 30 years later, Carver confronted and blackmailed Roverman into suicide and took over his media empire. Elliot Carver went to college in Hong Kong and received a degree in communication arts. By his own accounts, he had worked for a local newspaper during his adolescence. During his early adulthood, he was hired as a meteorologist at a Hong Kong television station and eventually became the station's anchorman. During this time, he often sexually harassed his female co-workers to the point that one of them fled Hong Kong to get away from him. In the years since, Carver fashioned himself as a media magnate, utilising his background in the press and broadcasting. After striking success in rebranding Roverman's enterprise as his own, Carver took Paris McKenna as his first wife. Before marrying Elliot, Paris Carver was romantically linked to James Bond. Now, my rating of Elliot Carver is 3 out of 10. I think he is an abysmal Bond villain. The idea and concept is great, but the way he portrays it is so hammy that it's ruined. So for me, 3 out of 10 for Elliot Carver. Okay, next we've got Blofeld, played by Charles Gray, circa 1971. Once again pursued by a vengeful James Bond, Blofeld begins creating identical decoys of himself using plastic surgery. Bond eventually tracks down Blofeld's operations to a cavernous facility where his lookalikes are being created. After drowning a test subject, Bond is confronted by and kills a second decoy, who he assumes to be the real Blofeld. Now operating out of White's hotel penthouse and with the industrialist's considerable resources at his disposal, Blofeld set about construction of a diamond satellite, with which he intended to blackmail the world's governments, auctioning off nuclear supremacy to the highest bidder. For construction of its own weapon, he set up a diamond smuggling pipeline, which transported South African diamonds to Willard White's Tektronix plant in California. This version of Blofeld is so weak, it's so campy and unthreatening. The idea of the plastic surgery, I guess, was cool at the time, but looking back, it's very dated. Charles Gray is not a good Blofeld in my opinion, and I'm going to give him a 4 out of 10. So next we have Renard, Victor Zokas. Victor Zokas was born in Moscow, the offspring of an unwed Russian barhound and an unknown Bosniak father. Zokas' childhood was particularly traumatic as he was raised in poverty, often beaten by his drunkard mother and frequently ridiculed by his 3 half-sisters. At the age of 14 he ran away from home and soon after joined the Soviet army. In time, Kas became unpopular among his peers, notorious for his vicious nature. His particularly brutal methods were noted by his superiors, and it was decided that a place at the KGB was better suited for him. Shortly before the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Zokas was ultimately expelled from the KGB after the Afghan conflict due to his evident mental instability. Afterwards, Zokas began to fully embrace his Renard alias and became one of the world's most feared terrorists. Now, when I saw the trailers for this movie, I thought it looked amazing. However, they don't use him enough. This man can feel no pain, yet the fight is mediocre, so I'm going to give him a 5 out of 10. He could have been at an 8 or a 9, but he's underused. Francisco Scaramanga. By the age of 15, he had left the circus and was working as a gunman in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. He was recruited there by the KGB and trained in Eastern Europe, where for many years he was basically just another overworked and underpaid assassin for the KGB. He quit the KGB in the late 1950s, becoming an independent hitman for hire, charging $1 million a kill. Among his victims is shockingly Bill Fairbanks, an MI6 00 agent 002 in 1969. All of Scaramanga's dealings go through his diminutive accomplice Knick Knack, which allows Scaramanga to remain anonymous. No photographs of him exist, but he has unusual anatomy, a third nipple. As in the original novel, it is shown that Scaramanga makes love prior to killing in the belief that it improves the eye. Now, I don't mind Scaramanga as a villain. He's pretty threatening. I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10. Next we have Dr. Kananga, aka Mr. Big, played by Yaphet Kotto. Dr. Kananga, operating under the alias Mr. Big, is a businessman and owner of a chain of restaurants in New York City and New Orleans called Fillet of Soul. As Big, he is also the head of one of the most vicious street gangs in Harlem. Kananga is the de facto dictator of the fictional Caribbean island of San Monique, and thus has certain diplomatic immunities in the United States, easily allowing him to smuggle drugs into the country. To aid himself in the role, Kananga used latex makeup as a disguise. Now, this guy is too obsessed with the occult and believing in tarot to be a real threat of a villain. This is his weakness, and I'm giving him a 4 out of 10. No real threat to James Bond at all. Dominic Greene. Greene runs an organisation called Green Planet, which is supposedly devoted to buying up large sums of land for ecological preservation. However, Greene is secretly a member of Quantum, a criminal organisation which accrues power and influence through world finance and geopolitics. During the events of the film, he is spearheading their Tierra project in Bolivia. When showing Camille Montes the body of her informant, he relates the story of how when he was 15, he had a crush on one of his mother's piano students. He overheard this girl say mean things about him. Angry, he presumably killed her with an iron. Dominic Greene's a difficult one to judge. He has money and he's a legitimate businessman. He's not in hiding as such, and he can buy his way out of anything. However, take away his money, he's not that threatening. So I'm going to give him a 5 out of 10. And that's purely because without the money, he's nothing. So coming up in my next video, we have the next 6 James Bond movie villains rated out of 10 with a brief description of why. And I'm just going to leave that on there.
Somebody turn on the AC, because it's Angel Caruso.